In this video, we'll show you how to remove and replace the passenger side CV axle in a Nissan Maxima. 21mm socket. We're going to remove the lug nuts on the front tire. Remove the old cotter pin. Make sure you discard it because you're not going to reuse it. 32mm socket. Remove the axle nut. So to remove the lower sway bar link connection to the sway bar rod, ours is broken, as you can see, the link's completely gone. The inside would be a 19mm wrench, and the outside is an 18mm wrench or socket. And then we're going to break that free. Mm 18mm socket. We're going to take the pinch bolt out from the knuckle that holds the ball joint in. 18mm wrench on the other side. 18mm socket. Now with the long pry bar, I'm going to take this ball joint right out because I don't want to damage it, because I'm removing it just to take the axle out. I'm going to move the tie rod in so I have more of a swing to get that axle out. Let's take the cotter pin off. Discard it. You're not going to reuse that. 19mm socket. And you can always just give it a little tap right on that knuckle. Push that aside. So this plastic shield, I'm going to take out of the way because I think it's in the way. If you don't think it is, you don't have to move it. I'm just taking a trim tool piece and I'm taking those clips out. That way I have better visual from this angle to look at the mounting bolts. Now with the axle nut out, tie rod end out, ball joint out, I can take this knuckle and literally pull this axle right out. There we go. There we go. Now I'm just going to get a bungee cord or a tie-down strap and pull that aside. I'm just going to take my ratcheting strap, make sure I don't bend any flex hoses or anything like that, or ABS wires. I'm just going to wrap it around that knuckle. This way it doesn't slide out. And then I'll tie it off to my ratchet. There we go. Now we have all this room to work with. That's nice. All right, so we're going to remove these two bolts right here. There's one on that side and one on that side. That's a flange that holds this long extension shaft into the transmission. So the bolt head is a 16mm socket. I'm going to get an extension, slide that right in there, break that free. There's two of them, one on the other side. So I put a bucket under where the axle goes into the transmission in case there's any fluid loss, which is what can be expected. The two bolts that bolt to that housing, it's not unusual that it's kind of stiff. So I'm going to use an air chisel, see if I can separate that two housing just by the vibration, hopefully alone. All right, this worked. Now we got it out of that bearing axle housing. I'm just going to take it, lift it up, slide it right out. So before I install the new axle, because of this carrier bearing style, I'm going to take some anti-seize spray and I'm just going to coat that area so that when that steel piece meets that housing, it won't freeze for the next person. So the axle housing for that carrier bearing has a drip. So it's got an angle just like that. So you want to make sure that pin part is on the bottom. And we're going to just guide it right through. And before we get to the other side, we're going to go underneath and guide it so we don't damage the transmission seal. So I'm going to take my left hand, I'm going to guide this. You can see the center of that seal, and then with my right arm, I'm going to lift that axle out. And I'm just going to guide this in without hitting that seal. And just keep spinning it. Let's see, make sure that bracket's facing the right way. And it is. That's good. With a pry bar or a screwdriver, I'm just going to see if I can turn that to line up, just like that. Let's hope it stays. And now I'm just going to hopefully be able to slide it right in. Now I can take those two bolts that bolt that housing on. Start them by hand. I'm going to get my socket and extension. I'm going to snug those up before I torque them up. 16 millimeter socket, and just snug them right up. So the factory specs for these two carrier bearing mounting bolts is 32 foot-pounds. So before I install the axle back into the spindle for the bearing, I'm just going to put a little bit of copper spray on these threads. We can undo our ratchet strap. That out of the way. All right, so we're going to pull this spindle knuckle out as far as we can. Hold it there, grab this axle, center it. Just like that. You don't want to wiggle that around. Get those splines to start. I'm going to get a long pry bar, pull down on that control arm. Now you got the ball joint lined up with the knuckle. Take a rubber mallet. You're going to want to make sure that that indent is lined up with the bolt hole so you can put the pinch bolt straight through. So just tap it with a rubber mallet till you see that half moon so that the bolt will go straight through. Just like that. Turn it. Put the nut on the other side. start it by hand. And then we get our socket and tighten that up. So 18mm wrench on the nut side and socket 18mm. Let's tighten and snug up this pinch bolt. So I'm going to put my 18mm wrench back on the nut side, socket 18, and I'm going to tighten this to 63 foot-pounds. Now we can put the tie rod in, back into the knuckle. That has a flat washer, and then the actual nut. $19mm socket or a wrench, and the torque spec is 26 foot-pounds. Now we're going to put our new cotter pin in. Just line it up. Make sure you bend it. I like to bend mine all the way around. Tap them down. If there's any excess, just snip it away. And if your jam nut, which is right here on the inner tie rod end and connects the outer together, was a little loose by any reason, always tighten it. I have a 22mm wrench, and then give it a little snug spin. There you go. Now we can install our axle nut. That's a 32mm socket, 1/2-inch gun. Just bottom it out, and we're going to torque that to factory specs. So to tighten that spindle nut, axle nut, it's 129 foot-pounds. I like to take a long pry bar. I'm going to wedge it right in there against the ground. Set my torque wrench to 129 foot-pounds. The axle comes with a new castle crown, so what you're going to do is line that up. And a new cotter pin. You're going to put that right through. And then cut off the excess. Now we're going to attach the sway bar link to the sway bar. Fish that link right through. Take the lock nut, start it. That has Teflon thread on the end, so you're only going to go so far. 19mm wrench on the inside. And my 18 ratchet wrench. Once it bottoms out, now I'm going to get my torque wrench, put my 18mm socket on there, and set it to the factory spec. Torque spec for this sway bar link to bracket is 78.5. Now we can put this inner fender liner in. Take your push pins. Now we can mount the tire. I'll lug this on by hand. $21mm socket. Go in a crisscross pattern or star pattern. Just snug them up, and we'll torque them when we lower it to the ground. 21mm socket, 83 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Double check. When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.